Hi everyone, it's Hayley and we have a baby. If you can't tell by the title, this is going to be my labour and delivery story with CAIUS, who is maybe 30 hours old. We're still in the birth centre. We go home tomorrow afternoon, but yeah, I thought I've got a moment, I might try and get this done. So I've written everything down. Today is Sunday, September 29th. He was born yesterday. CAIUS's labour and delivery story. This starts on Friday, which was the 27th, and I was 39 weeks and 6 days. I had been to my midwife on Wednesday, 2 days prior, and everything was normal. Sorry, this is not going to be edited. Yeah, everything was normal at my appointment. Head was in my pelvis, not any further than it had been the week prior, but he was sounding good. Everything was good. My sister had arrived in town the day before, and so we did a lot of walking. She gave me a lot of back massages and foot massages, and I've been having Braxton Hicks for a long time, as you know, like weeks, and so they were, you know, doing their usual thing. And then on Friday, which was the 27th, my sister and I went for a walk in the morning, I think. Yeah, we went for a walk in the morning, about an hour long, and nothing felt any different than normal. And then at about 1:15 in the afternoon, I lay down for a nap because AJ was having a nap, and at about 1:30, or just after I lay down, I got a Braxton Hicks contraction, which that happens, you know, whenever I sort of lie down and relax. But then they kept happening, and it wasn't until an hour later that I started to time them. And to refer to my notes here, they were 3 to 13 minutes apart, and they were lasting between 15 seconds and a minute. So I mean, that was really varied, but it was definitely not what had been happening previously at all. You know, it was different, it was changing. So this continued till about 5:30. I used my contraction timer to do this, which I found my contraction timer was really good, and I highly recommend doing that if that's something you want to do. Then they spread out after about 5:30 p.m. that night to anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes. But what happened was, when I started getting them in the afternoon, they had changed to a period cramp feeling running across my belly and around the back. It wasn't a tightening feeling, it wasn't the same, it was different. And even though they spread out that night, the intensity was still the same. So I went to bed about 10 p.m. I can't remember whether my sister gave me a massage that night. I don't think she did. Oh, she might have. She might have. I think she gave me a back massage. I went to bed about 10 p.m. and was able to, you know, fall asleep and things. But I kept dreaming that I was having contractions. Yeah, something in my subconscious was telling me that I was having contractions. But yeah, I didn't really, I woke up a few times to go to the toilet, but I wouldn't have any contractions while I was awake, so I thought I must really have been dreaming. But then at 3:45 in the morning on Saturday, which was yesterday, doesn't feel like it was yesterday, it feels like it was a lifetime ago. But at 3:45 I woke to a painful contraction. It was painful enough to actually wake me up, like, properly. It was definitely not a Braxton Hicks contraction, and I knew it was, yeah, it was definitely not a Braxton Hicks contraction. It was completely different. Just gotta check my phone, sorry. So I woke up at 3:45 with this painful contraction. It was definitely not a Braxton Hicks contraction. It was a real labour contraction. And you know, like, the memories of my first labour and delivery was sort of starting to come back, and I remembered that feeling. I decided to start timing them at about 4:10. So, because I just wanted to see if I would have more before I started timing them. And when I was timing them, they were about 5 to 8 minutes apart, and they were lasting a minute, and they were quite sore. I stayed in bed though because I knew that, sorry, this chair is squeaky. I knew that if I got up I would be absolutely exhausted. If, you know, things were to go a similar path to my first labour and delivery, where I was in latent labour for like a whole day, and then active labour and, you know, delivery for another, it was another like 16 hours or whatever it was. So I stayed in bed and just kept lying on my side and swapping sides every now and then. They stayed at 5 to 8 minutes apart, lasting for a minute for 3 hours. And then at about 7 o'clock, they started to shorten in duration to about sort of 30 seconds, an average of 30 to 50 seconds. I'm reading all of this because it feels like a lifetime ago. But they were now between 2 and 6 minutes apart, so they were coming quicker, but they were shortening in duration. The feeling was still the same. The feeling didn't fade off or anything like that. And after a while of that, the intensity started to increase. But I knew that it didn't mean a hell of a lot, because they weren't lasting long enough. They weren't lasting, you know, at least a minute. They had shortened out. So, you know, I got up, I think it was about 7:30, and just sort of, you know, went about my morning. I had a shower at about 9 o'clock, and that felt really nice. I had quite a few contractions in the shower, and the hot water felt really nice. So I thought, okay, well, you know, if this feels good at this stage, then I probably will want to come back into the shower later, you know, if things continue to progress. At this point, I told my husband when he woke up that I had been having contractions, and I told my sister, but I didn't ring or text my midwife because it was just early. It was just early, and it could easily stall out like it did the first time. So I didn't notify anybody else. I just wanted to see how they would go. Are you okay, honey? I'll have boobies soon. You have some more boobies soon, eh? Hey, Nilly Bitty. I was using the gym ball. I was bouncing on the gym ball, swaying on the gym ball, back and forth. I found the gym ball. I used the gym ball like the whole time, basically. I found it really good. I'm definitely glad I bought that. Yeah, I used it pretty much the whole time, bouncing on it, and it was a way to keep me moving, but me not getting tired out by being on my feet the whole time. So as the morning was going on, I was starting to wince with some of the contractions, like it would be like, ooh, you know. I could still talk through them, but I would prefer not to. I'd be like, I'd rather not talk, like just, you know, breathe through them. I was starting to go, you know, breathing through them. They weren't getting any longer though, but the intensity was getting up there. The intensity was still increasing, but they just were not, they weren't getting any longer in duration. They were still like 2 to 6 minutes apart, and then that slowly started to shorten to to like 2 to 5 minutes and things like that. So it was slowly getting shorter, the time in between the contractions. At 12 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday, just before 12, I texted my midwife and I said, look, I've been having contractions, this is what they're doing, they're not long enough yet though, you know, they're still only sort of like 40 seconds apart, you know, but you know, this is what they're doing. So she said, okay, you know, see how you go, and just keep me updated. And then at 12 o'clock she texted me and she said, I'm actually leaving the hospital, I can swing by your house and check you if you want me to, or I can just leave you be. I said, oh well, you may as well check me, you know. I had a feeling I wouldn't be very far along, but I thought, well, you know, I may as well know where I am, so that, you know, I can say to my mum, you know, hurry, or don't worry about it, don't rush, or whatever, and stuff like that. So she arrived shortly after 12. She came and she checked me. First of all, she checked, you know, on top of my belly to see where CAIUS was, and his head was even further into my pelvis, but he was posterior. So she said, you know, you've got another posterior baby, but you've done this before, so you know, it can be done. Whoops. Then she did an internal and she checked me. She said my cervix was really soft and it was right at the front. I was 3 centimeters. She could stretch me to a 4. She said I was definitely very, very much a 3. She could feel CAIUS's head. She gave me a stretch and sweep and did all that. And my mucus plug was starting to come when she was checking me. She said, you actually got some mucus plug coming out now, so she said I'll go ahead and do the stretch and sweep. So she did that. I was all for that. She said that because I've now done this and I've broken the capillaries in your membranes, things could happen quite fast from now on, because more prostaglandins are going to be released. So she said things could easily pick up quite quickly from now on. She said my waters were very much like, she said, well, they could go at any time now. They're very bulging and sort of ready to burst in there. So yeah, she did all that. I said, yeah, I'll hang around home, I'll let you know what happens, blah blah blah. She said, yep, cool, you know, let me know when you feel like you're ready to go into the birth centre and I can ring them and get all of that set up. So yeah, so she left, and then literally the next contraction I had after she left was like 10 times worse than my previous ones, and from then on things got really crazy. Like, I've heard of other people's stories like this. I never thought it would happen to me, but the contractions became really, really intense, and by about sort of like the 5th or 6th contraction after she left, they were starting to get longer, and was sort of like 2 to 3 minutes apart. but were like lasting 50 seconds to a minute, and then it was like 55 seconds to a minute, and then it was like a minute or more. I was getting a lot of back labour, which I figured because CAIUS was posterior, but my midwife had said do a lot of leaning forward, leaning over things, you know, sitting on the ball and rocking forward and leaning over, you know, just leaning over, and that should help him hopefully turn. By 1 p.m. they were coming, contractions were coming every 1.5 to 2 minutes, and they were lasting a minute, sometimes a minute and a half, and it was getting quite painful. I had my sister doing a lot of counter pressure on my back. I was rolling with the ball. I was sort of like on my hands and knees on the floor, and at about 1 o'clock was when I started to actually like moan and groan through them. It was getting, I was having to do like the primal moaning and groaning, and so my midwife, I think she texted me and just said, you know, how you going or something, and my sister had texted back on my behalf and said, you know, it's, you know, this is what's going on, and she said, well, you know, do you think you can hang out at home a bit longer or what? And I said, I think I can last a little bit longer. But then, yeah, these primal moans and groans and noises were getting really intense, and the contractions were getting really intense, and it was like they were coming on top of each other really. I was really now only getting sort of a minute and a minute half break, and of course they were lasting, you know, a minute and a minute and a minute to a minute and a half while I was having them. It was, I felt like this is what I remember thinking to myself, I felt like this in transition with AJ, and when I was in transition with AJ I was losing my mind. I didn't feel quite like I was losing my mind this time, because I was so sure that I was not in transition. I mean, I'd only been checked an hour ago, and I was at 3, so, you know, surely, so I was saying to myself, I can do this, I can do this, I can hack this out, you know, surely we're like nearly halfway, something like that. Now at this point nothing was easing the pain. This is about 1:15 in the afternoon. Nothing was helping with the pain, heat pack, counter pressure, nothing. It was just like I had to go with it. I had to go moan and groan and, you know, yell sort of noises. My husband said, I think we should go in now. And I was like, okay. So we texted my midwife and she said, yep, okay, I'll meet you there. And we left, I think that we texted at 1:25 p.m. and sorry, I just had to get him attached to the breast. He was starving. He didn't want to hear my story anymore. Where was I up to? We text my wife that we wanted to go to the birth centre, and that was about 1:25. But because I was having so many contractions, like one after the other, it took us 15 minutes to finally be able to like leave the house, or for me to be able to get out of the house without having a contraction. I was sort of like bending over, kind of, I couldn't walk straight. I could barely walk at all. So it was a bit of a mission getting us out the door, never mind the fact that I was completely unorganised. Like, we left like half the stuff at home for our bags and everything, because we just, nobody was expecting this to happen like this. So we left half the stuff at home. I didn't even have shoes with me. I had a contraction before I got into the car, so I had to deal with that, and then I climbed into the back of the car and was on all fours as we drove. It only took 5 minutes to get from our house to the birth centre, but in that time I had three contractions that were really, really bad. And then so we got to the birth centre, we got into the labour room, and this must have been about 1:45. Yeah, 1:45 in the afternoon. I went through 5 really painful contractions at the birth centre, in the labour and delivery room, 5 really painful ones, and then I started feeling a whole lot of pressure. So we must have been here maybe 10 minutes. I was really feeling the pressure, so I climbed up on the bed, and my midwife said, by the sound you're making, it's like you're ready to push. It was such a whirlwind. I was just like, what the heck? But I really do remember it was just crazy. So I climbed up on the bed. I didn't want to push, but I knew I had to. I don't know why I didn't want to push. I just was like, I think because it was all happening so fast, and there was no sort of gradual build up to this point. It had just gone from 0 to 60. It was just like, what? So I was I was on my knees on the bed, with my head facing like the back of the bed, like the headboard, leaning up against there. And then I really started to, when the pressure came, when the contractions came, like my body was wanting me to push, but I was trying not to, and eventually I just had to give up on that, and just go with it. I did a couple of contractions while I was on my knees, and I think it was the 3rd contraction that I was on my knees. I felt this immense pain and pressure, and my waters broke, and they gushed everywhere, all over the bed, and so that was a new experience. I've never felt my waters break before. I've had them broken, and I had them broken with my first baby, and nothing came out. I didn't feel anything, but this time it was really painful. Feeling my waters break, actually, it was really painful. So waters broke as I was pushing. Then I decided I didn't think I liked being on my knees, and I wanted to turn around and be on my back, and birth the way I did with my first son. So I turned over, and I didn't know it at the time, but when my waters broke, there was meconium in my waters. So CAIUS had done his first poop, but my midwife put the Doppler on him, and he sounded fine, so he wasn't in distress or anything. I must have pushed through 5 contractions. It wasn't very many, but I know I pushed for 25 minutes or something, and he was born at 2:28 p.m. It was just so quick, and he had turned, he was anterior, so his head came out way easier than AJ's did, and it was all very quick, like really quick. It was crazy. She pulled him out, and that's when I saw that he was like kind of like, he was like green and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, oh, that's when I realised that he'd done his poop. But she pulled him out, and his umbilical cord was wrapped twice around his waist and then over his shoulder like a sash. So she untangled him. He was crying straight away. He wasn't quiet or anything. He was crying and he was awake, and he was just like, you know, very unhappy to be out of the womb. His umbilical cord was over 1 meter long. It was crazy. She was like, whoa, that's got to be at least 1 meter long. That's crazy how long that is. We were just like, what the heck? So it's basically, he had a bungee cord in there. So, yeah, he was born at 2:28 p.m. He weighed 7 pounds 15 ounces. Perfect. He's just perfect. He looks nothing like his brother. He's got dark hair, dark skin, and we're picking he's probably going to have dark eyes. So we're thinking he's probably going to look a bit more like me, whereas AJ sort of looks a bit more like, has more of Justin's colouring. I didn't tear or rip or anything. I had no tears or rips, which was really good. She said I had a slight graze, but that was it. My placenta came probably 20 minutes after he was born. So that came quite on its own. That was fine. Everything was fine. Yeah, and he was fine, even though I was like, oh my god, is he okay? You know, because he's, you know, I know that babies doing, when you have meconium in your waters, it can be a serious matter. But she said, no, he's fine. She checked him out. He was absolutely fine. So, yeah, so it was a whirlwind labour and delivery. From my first early labour contractions to the time he was born was 25 hours. Active established labour till birth was 3.5 hours. So yeah, because my midwife, she said, well, you're in established labour. When she came to check me, she said, because this has been going on for an hour and the sounding the way they're sounding, I would say you're in established labour. So so yeah, so it was really quick. It was just really, really quick. And even though it was really quick, it was, I feel like it was more painful pushing this time than last time. I don't know, it just, I remember thinking while I was pushing, I don't want to do this again. We'll see if that's true though, I don't know. But yeah, so it was just a complete whirlwind. But he's here and he's healthy. I'm doing pretty darn well.